Welcome to episode 265, AI and the Future of Therapy, Opportunities, Limits, and Staying Human, featuring Kelly Higdon, licensed marriage and family therapist, and Miranda Palmer, licensed marriage and family therapist. Make sure to subscribe to be alerted about future episodes. By Clearly Clinical, learn, grow, shine. This episode has been proudly sponsored by AutoNotes, an AI-powered clinical workspace helping therapists save time on documentation while supporting ethical, HIPAA-aligned care.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of talking about ethics, AI, and our fight to keep therapy human. I'm Kelly Higdon.
And I'm Miranda Palmer, and we are both LMFTs. We happen to live in California, and we've been doing work both as therapists and also as consultants for a long time. So we get to not just be in awareness of our own relationship with AI, but we also get to work with a lot of therapists from around the country and around the world in terms of how AI is impacting them in their private practices, in their 1099 contracting, in their W-2 employments, and all these different areas. And so we think we know a lot of important pieces that are getting missed in this conversation. So we're excited to be here diving into this conversation.
Right. And I think it's really important that we feel this is an important conversation, and what we share today will probably continue to evolve as technology evolves. But a lot of therapists come to us because they are, struggling with what is going on with AI and therapy. Are we being replaced? They're noticing referrals may have slowed down. They're not sure how to use the tools that are out there. They're wondering if they're missing something important. And that's why we are here today. And it is not to fearmonger. We really want to empower you. And we're not here to push tools on you, even if they don't feel aligned, but really to ground you in what's happening, what's ethical, what's changing, and most importantly, how you can stay human and powerful in the midst of it all.
So sort of what we want to cover today is what is actually happening in mental health with AI? What are those legal and ethical gray zones to really pay attention to? How you can protect yourself and the profession, how to use AI to support your practice ethically. And then of course, how do we navigate all of that? So let's take a breath maybe together. As we have this conversation, we'll try to build in some pauses because there'll be information in here that's really exciting, but also information that's a little alarming and frustrating. So a little hand on the heart, a little presence, nowhere else to be right now. We're glad you're here.
So before we get into the details, we want to zoom out for a minute and really name why we are here. Because AI is no longer something off in the distance. It's here, not just in our daily lives, but it's also here in our mental health care field. Clients are asking ChatGPT how to handle breakups or work through parenting struggles. Insurance companies are testing AI for assessments, quality assurance reviews, denials, and EAP intakes. Tech companies are using our labor to develop AI, and AI therapists are marketing themselves as a better alternative to real humans. Tools are showing up from everything from documentation to marketing that might make you feel curious. It might make you feel anxious. You might feel both. But what really matters is that you're here because you care about your work, your clients, your license, and the future of this profession. So let's get into what's really going on and how you can stay grounded and empowered as it unfolds.
Now, before we dive any deeper, let's make sure we're speaking the same language. Because when people are talking about oh my gosh, AI is going to take over therapy, what do they actually mean? The truth is there isn't just one kind of AI that's showing up in our field. There are at least three major types already shaping how mental health care is accessed, delivered, and defined. So first we have AI quote unquote therapists. These tools are designed to simulate therapy and are often marketed as replacements for human therapists. They might be labeled CBT informed, emotionally intelligent, or always available. They're trained in vast data rooted in mental health care, actual session transcripts, books, and blogs. And sometimes they can sound very convincing. But here's the thing. There's no clinical oversight, no ethical responsibility, and no relational nuance. It may sound like therapy, but it's not held like therapy. Then there is generative AI. This is like the ChatGPT, the Claude, the Geminis, the Groks. These tools respond in real time to prompts. They can reflect, mirror. They might sound like a really warm therapist, but they weren't built for mental health. Still, a lot of your clients are using them to talk things through, and many therapists are experimenting behind the scenes too for documentation, marketing, content creation, and more. In fact, there's some data that's been reported that says that like the biggest use case, like the thing that's being used the most for this generative AI is like support, emotional support and questions like mental health care, which is really interesting. Used ethically, some of these can support your systems, but you have to bring discernment. And we want to give you some specific ways you can do that today. And then there's also predictive AI. This is the kind of AI that's built into hospital systems, EHRs, insurance platforms. It's designed to spot patterns and things like suicide risk, potential dropout, or likelihood of hospitalization based on large amounts of data. This can help us intervene earlier, but it's often not transparent. You may not know how the risk score was generated or whether it's based on biased or incomplete data. You're still the clinician and you are still responsible. This, of course, is also the area that insurance companies are looking. They want to spot reasons to deny care, to flag cases for clawbacks, or to automate audits because of quality assurance, right? We know that of the research, the data shows there's a huge portion of these denials already that are inaccurate, that they're wrong, right? Currently, one of the reasons insurance companies haven't done clinical reviews on every case is because it's not cost effective. But is that the case if they can use AI for quality, to deny care, to flag cases for clawback, to automate audits under the guise of that quality assurance? Now, each of these different types of AIs or areas of AI plays a different role and brings different risks and opportunities. And again, we don't want to fear AI, but we're also not here to blindly adopt it. So we're here to understand, like, are there ways that we can use it thoughtfully and ethically, in ways that support, not replace, what makes therapy powerful?
So as of today, there's constant new tools being marketed as therapists. We have like Wobot, Abby, Noah, Wysa. Tomorrow there's going to be a new one, and we can look at them. They all look a little different. There are some big patterns that we noticed amongst a lot of these AI therapists. I say that with quotation marks. You can't see my fingers quoting, but most of these are CBT based or CBT adjacent. They're offering structured responses and coping tools. They're often marketed as increasing access, especially for folks in underserved or low resource communities. And some claim privacy protections, but they still collect user data behind the scenes. So let's talk like Abby, for example, is an AI tool. It's promoted as a, quote, 24/7 therapist in your pocket, end quote. Let's just sit with that for a second. Therapist. Who gets to use that word now? These tools straddle a really dangerous gray area. They simulate support, they sound warm, they feel like therapy, but they're not built on clinical training. There's no license, no oversight, no ethical duty of care, and no accountability if something goes wrong. And clients may not know the difference, especially when the language being used feels familiar or comforting. And that's why marketing isn't just fluff. It's shaping public perception of what therapy is and who gets to provide it.
Next up is Noah. To its credit, Noah's a little more transparent. It clearly states it offers emotional support, not treatment, not assessment, not therapy. But here's where it gets a little tricky. It's still being marketed as a solution to the same pain points clients have with accessing therapy. It's fast, it's affordable, it's available anytime. The messaging taps into the frustration that many people feel when they're stuck on a wait list, can't find a provider who gets them, or can't afford really weekly care. So while it may not claim to be therapy, it's still functioning as this therapy adjacent, filling a gap without the protections, training, or responsibility that comes with being a licensed provider. And again, many clients may not know the difference. So after exploring, right, looking at a couple of AI therapists, let's look at a generative tool like ChatGPT and how people are actually using them in some cases as stand-ins for therapy.
Mm-hmm. I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to role play as an IFS therapist to help me explore a relationship decision. Now, if you said, will you be my therapist? Chat will say, no, I can't do that. If you ask it to role play, it will carry forward. And to be honest, it felt supportive. The responses were reflective, warm, and aligned with the IFS process on the surface. But here's the thing, even when it sounds right, generative AI is still missing some of the most important ingredients of real therapy. ChatGPT gets caught in loops of affirmation. It's like an echo chamber. You're right. You're doing great. Saying yes more often than actually confronting or correcting the person. So even when ChatGPT says the right words, there's no awareness, no memory, and no relational accountability. And what you get is the illusion of empathy through pattern recognition. It's not true attunement. And so we saw this happen in the news. In July of 2025, Wall Street Journal story was sharing about a troubling scenario, which ChatGPT unintentionally fueled a user's manic episode by validating unrealistic beliefs. In this case, even the person checked in with ChatGPT because they were concerned that they were getting grandiose, and ChatGPT told them they weren't. Quote, when Irwin questioned the chatbot's validation of his ideas, the bot encouraged him, telling him his theory was sound. And when Irwin showed signs of psychological distress, ChatGPT assured him he was fine. He wasn't. Irwin was hospitalized twice in May for manic episodes. His mother dove into his chat log in search of answers, end quote. The AI later admitted its mistake, acknowledging its failure to apply reality checks, but the incident exposes a major gap. Large language chatbots aren't yet equipped to identify responsibly respond to mental health red flags. And experts now argue for the rapid implementation of stronger safety measures and human oversight when AI systems engage with at-risk individuals. And unfortunately, we've seen lots more of this in the media as the day that we are recording this in 2026. A lot of harm has happened to people who have gone through this process.
Yeah, it's interesting too. There was actually Joe Braidward shut down an AI therapy ad after deciding it was too dangerous. He says AI chatbots aren't safe for mental health. He had been launching an AI therapy platform called Yara AI, and it was pitched as a clinically inspired platform designed to provide genuine, responsible support when you need it most. And it was trained by mental health experts to offer empathetic, evidence-based guidance tailored to your unique needs. And quote, this is what he shared on LinkedIn, we stopped Yara because we realized we were building in an impossible space. AI can be wonderful for everyday stress, sleep problems, or processing a difficult conversation. But the moment someone truly vulnerable reaches out, someone in crisis, someone with deep trauma, someone contemplating ending their life, AI becomes dangerous. Not just inadequate, dangerous. In response to one person who commented on his post, he said the risks were kept me up all night. Right?
Yeah.
So like these are the pieces, right? That here is somebody who was probably a really hard decision, right? Someone who's not a therapist, a tech founder, that was just like, actually, this is really not okay. But because a lot of these companies are being led based on venture capital funding, in some cases, some of these companies are being funded or invested in by insurance companies. Like there's so much that's happening behind the scenes as to what's happening. It gets really, really messy, right?
I think something else we have to name here is that this whole system, the AI, is trained on massive data sets, books, research papers, therapy transcripts, forums, mental health blogs. Let's be honest, those sources aren't free from bias. In fact, many reflect and perpetuate racist, ableist, classist, and colonialist structures. So if we take those sources, train a machine on them, and then deploy it to support the very communities those systems were designed to oppress, there is cause for concern. Even with the best intentions, AI therapists and generative AI risk reinforcing the same harms and blind spots baked into our field's history. This is why we can't just ask, does it sound helpful? We also have to ask, who is it helping and at what cost? This is about ethics, equity, and accountability, especially if these tools are being positioned as the solution for people with the fewest choices.
So therapy, AI therapy isn't a therapeutic relationship. It's not an intervention guided by clinical reasoning. It's not bound by ethical codes and state laws that govern licensed professionals. It's not supervised or peer-reviewed in the way that human care is. It is not risk-free or private, as data privacy breaches are a major ethical risk with AI therapy bots. Even the example of the mom going in to look at the chat GPT, what exactly happened? What were the transcripts? It's not a replacement for human insight, attunement, or relational care, and it is not free from bias. So even when it sounds supportive or helpful, what's missing is that heart of therapy, the human insight, the relational attunement, repair when harm happens, a container of trust and safety. And again, right? It's so interesting. A lot of the platforms claim security, but many are not HIPAA compliant. So there's a lot of hidden consents happening in not just AI, but in a lot of different tech forward mental health platforms and such, where people are saying yes to things, not realizing that when they say yes to AI recording recording their session to help the therapist do the documentation, that those recordings that are deleted are the audio recordings, but the transcripts are kept, and the transcripts are de-identified. But actually, with the rise of AI, we can't actually truly de-identify everything, especially when we have transcripts and details. It's very easy for AI to put it back together, right? Ugh. So let's talk about how is ChatGPT compared to a therapist. A study published in PLS Mental Health compared ChatGPT to human therapists in couples therapy scenarios involving 830 participants. The AI counselor received higher ratings than human therapists across several key metrics: empathy, cultural sensitivity, understanding, and appropriateness of advice. The key findings were, quote, participants couldn't reliably distinguish between AI and human responses. When the participants believed responses were from a therapist, even if it was AI, they rated them more favorably. ChatGPT's verbose, descriptive language, rich in nouns and adjectives, may have helped it feel more empathetic and contextual. Human therapists who were more concise tended to be rated lower. However, the researchers caution against relying on AI for therapy in real-life supervised settings. AI lacks safeguards around sensitive topics like self-harm, and unpredictable responses could pose risks. In other words, AI just does weird stuff sometimes. Despite that, the ease of access and affordability is already drawing people to AI for more support. So let's pause for a minute. What comes up for you when you hear research like this? When you notice that people are trying to rate you as a human better, but they are actually rating ChatGPT as more present? You might feel a pang of fear when you hear that some clients say they feel more empathy from ChatGPT than from a human therapist. What if, instead of staying in the fear, we see this as an invitation to get curious? What if the fear is pointing us towards something? Are we so burned out that empathy isn't showing up in the way that it used to? Are we rushing, trying to survive the day instead of connecting in a way that truly lands? Are we rushing, trying to navigate insurance considerations and allowing insurance to determine how we show up in the work. Have we lost touch with the sacredness of our work because systems we work in are broken? And on the flip side, if AI is being praised for being available, accessible, and consistent, are we really clearly communicating the real value and the difference of human therapy in a way that's visible to communities? Do our marketing messages reflect the depth and healing we offer, speaking to the transformational value of the work that we do? Like, do we fully believe in what we do right now? You don't need to compete with the machine, right? We want you to know that you can reclaim what makes us all like irreplaceable. So, I just want to give you maybe some questions to like sit with and reflect on. You could pause and do that right now, or you could come back to these like later during your private time, like to journal on, like what comes to mind when you hear the phrase AI therapist? What emotions show up and what are they inviting me to look at within myself? And what ways do I think AI tools could support my clients or potentially mislead or harm them? Am I burned out? Am I taking the time to be thoughtful in how I show up well therapeutically? And am I clear about how therapy with me is different? Not to compare, but to stand on my truth about who we are, like who you are and what you do.
So we've just explored a lot around the rise of AI in therapy and how it's showing up and how it's being marketed and how it compares to the deep work we do as human therapists. So before we move on, let's just take a few deep breaths. Let yourself come back into your body, feel your feet on the floor, wherever you are, touching the ground. Just notice your breath. We're just taking a pause because I think it's really important to stay connected to ourselves. It's one of the most radical human things we can do in the age of AI. And we're going to continue to explore what AI therapy is, but we need to really ground ourselves in the legal and ethical framework that surrounds it. And we're going to unpack now the laws, how licensing boards and ethics apply or don't to AI in therapy. And then we're going to apply these insights to your own practice. When we were talking about AI therapists like Abby and other tools that use that therapist term, a title protected by some states' licensing, right? We were talking about who owns that word. So title protections vary by state, country, province, but these platforms aren't subject to the same oversight as our licenses. And that's a problem because it confuses clients, it devalues our training and risks harm. So there's public confusion because clients may believe that they're receiving real therapy when they're not, especially in underserved or tech-saturated communities. There's devaluation of our clinical work when therapy becomes a buzzword anyone can use. The years of training, supervision, and accountability required for licensed clinicians get sidelined. There's legal and ethical gray issues. If someone is harmed by an AI, there may be no clear recourse. We see this being tested right now in the courts, of like who's taking who to court. And then it also undermines trust in the profession. If people associate therapy, quote, with automated scripts, disconnected experiences, or poor outcomes, they may distrust actual therapeutic care. We saw that. It rippled out into the broader public doing great work, and then people are like, then think this is how therapy is. And so then it really hurt the mental health field and how therapists were viewed. So there's this ripple effect into the broader public. It can really shape the perceptions of therapy in whole communities.
So where are licensing boards on these conversations of AI therapy? There's really no unified position right now across state or national boards regarding whether therapists can ethically use AI in documentation, clinical support, or client communication, whether companies can call chatbots therapists, what therapists must disclose when AI is involved in any therapeutic process, right? So there are so many places for us to look, but the conversations aren't happening in a wide variety of spaces. And this vacuum allows misuse. It can leave therapists exposed and clients confused, and therapy itself vulnerable to a level of commodification and problematic care that we haven't seen previously, right? So if the boards, right, the licensing boards aren't saying anything, what about our professional associations? Some, like the AMHCA, have released ethics addenda specific to AI use, focused on transparency, consent, and therapist responsibility. They state, quote, CMHCs clearly disclose to clients when clinical services are provided by any modality other than direct person-to-person contact. In order to support client autonomy, CMHCs must disclose the extent, if any, to which clinical services are provided through or conjunction with the use of AI, machine learning, deep learning, or any other human simulation modality. They must obtain client consent before initiating these clinical services. They remain ultimately responsible for all clinical services they provide, including their choices about client evaluations, treatment planning, interventions, and assessments. When they use this technology to support clinical services, they're also responsible for ensuring that such technology is sufficiently safe, appropriate, and effective. Now, I want to pause for a minute, and I want you to hear all the ways that therapists are responsible. And here's the thing that I want you to hear. This responsibility does not end because you're a W-2 employee. This responsibility does not end because you're a 1099 contractor. It doesn't matter who employs you, what relationships you're using, whether it really actually sort of doesn't matter even if it's a part of the insurance contract that you're a part. When your name and license are associated with any of these spaces, any of these decisions, you are ultimately responsible. So what is this looking like in real life? In real life, people working for mental health platforms have sometimes AI bots that are popping up and saying, you have to use this assessment. Here's exactly what you need to write in your clinical evaluation. And if you don't write this AI documentation, then you are now not protected from clawbacks from the insurance company, right? We have insurance companies who are doing blanket denials across everyone who has been had an adjustment disorder diagnosis for more than 6 months. Even though, right, especially in our current world, stressors might be new and coming up. So therapists are sometimes making decisions and saying, oh, well, then I guess I need to find another diagnosis, even though that actually is the appropriate diagnosis. So even though the AI bot is just saying like, oh, we don't do that, not understanding how diagnosis really works, therapists are being put into these like really sneaky situations. So I think it's really important to understand what our responsibility is as licensed individuals, and that responsibility does not go away based on where we're working. Like, it's just not.
So the NBCC, I think, does a really great job of saying what we're responsible for as clinicians, right? It released its ethical principles for AI in counseling. Are you ready for what you, the clinician, are responsible for? Accountability and clinical oversight. Counselors must remain fully in charge of all AI-generated treatment decisions. AI tools are assistants, not decision makers. Client welfare always comes first. AI should only be used when it's clearly beneficial and safe. If there's any risk to client well-being, counselors must step in or not use the tool at all. You need technical competence. Understand how the AI tool works, its limits, and data practices. Can we just pause here for a minute? How many of you are using AI tools, and do you know the data practices? Do you know what they're doing with that data? Do you know what de-identification means and how it could be re-identified by AI? There's a lot here. There's also...
And when you literally like log in to see your client on an online platform, And as you're logging in, it's a minute before your session. You don't think anything of it. And then there's like a little pop-up that happens. And it's like you can't move forward unless you click the box and click the pop-up, but you don't actually have time to read it. And you find out that if you click the pop-up, it just said that AI is going to be listening and recording your session, that you had a conversation with your client about the use of AI and what this all means when you didn't have any time to do, like, these are real use cases that are happening right now, that people are clicking a button so they can get into their session only to realize, oh, I just gave a permission. I just opened up my client's session to something that I did not want to do. And there's no way, or they've made it really difficult to revoke it. It's really insidious.
And that's what's happening on platforms. This may not, if you have your own encrypted software that you're using for tools and things like that, you still need to understand the technology. Even if it's not AI, this is like guiding ethical guidelines, right? Principles. And then there's also transparency, informed consent. Clients must be told when and how AI is used in their care, with clear explanation of the benefits, the limitations, and data handling, and always given the option to decline. So if you use any AI tools, you must give your clients the option to decline. That even goes if you're using an AI documentation software, right? Confidentiality and data security. Ensure that client data used with AI is encrypted, access is limited, and robust deletion policies are in place that must comply with HIPAA and state privacy laws. Y'all, it's very thick to read through these policies and to ensure that the data is being encrypted and that access is limited. We're finding this a lot with platforms, not necessarily, and tools that are AI based. It's very challenging to read some of this stuff. And documentation and oversight records clearly document every instance of AI use, including the tool names, the purpose, and the rationale. So when you are tracking client outcomes, you have to report any tool-related issues. So it's not just, I use this documentation software, I use this, had the session recorded by AI. You have to document your rationale. Why is this clinically appropriate and safe for the client?
And I don't think because my 1099 contra told me I had to.
No,
right?
That's not
and I think that's a reason that a lot of people are doing it. Or, well, because it was a new feature that was offered by my practice management system, right? Like, do you understand that, like, do you know how to read about the terms of service? Like, we look at these terms of service and they say, hey, it's all HIPAA consistent. No big deal. We only share this with our partners and subsidiaries and blah, blah, blah. And they'll list off 17 like vague categories of people for research, providing of service, creating new products. Like, they'll have this like very lengthy, and you're like, basically they can do anything that they want with it. Yeah, because you gave them permission and your client gave them permission.
I think NBC is really, and the NBCC is really clear. Their director of ethics, Brendan Hargett, a PhD, he's quoted as saying, it's up to us to make sure that we keep the client safe and we must be well informed about the technology. What is the translation there? You can't just sign up for using AI and cross your fingers. You have to really read the terms, evaluate the risks, and stay ethically grounded. And when you look at the APA Ethics Committee, they drafted an FAQ in 2023. We think it's a great tool for really understanding our ethical considerations in our practices. Emerging digital tools are not exception to the APA Ethics Code. They require transparency, competence, and professional responsibility when integrated into a psychologist's work. And when you look at the recommendations, they all rely heavily on the psychologist's understanding of what bias is, when facts may be distorted, and to only use AI within your skill set. They say to only use AI within your skill set, and that many of us are still learning. My skill set feels just like very newbie level, and I, I can't imagine. And that means the responsibility lands squarely on us. We must ask, do we really know what we are using? CAMFT also, like California Association of Marriage Family Therapy, has proposed ethics updates as well. Really, we want to be seeing this kind of proactivity, that from our associations, we think this is a good thing, right? Because CAMFT is acknowledging that there's bias and discrimination. AI tools can reinforce systemic inequities, right? There's blurred role and responsibility, what about AI when it mediates care, right? What is happening there in the therapeutic relationship, and how we as clinicians are accountable for client outcomes, even when third-party or proprietary AI tools are involved. Using AI should support, not replace, clinical judgment, right? We see tools where here's a treatment plan that it'll create for you. You are ultimately responsible. It is based on your clinical judgment. You can't go back to the AI and say, well, the AI wrote this. You ultimately are held accountable.
And I think this is one of the reasons, documentation has been an issue for therapists forever. Nobody really taught me directly about documentation. And I remember in clinical supervision, talking with my supervisor and being like, hey, can you look at my notes? And she was like, what? And I was like, can you look at my notes? And she's like, I don't know if I'll be that helpful. I'm actually not that great at notes. And I was like, no one is looking at my notes. Like, can you please read them? And so we started going over them, and it really helped to open up this conversation. But I remember her being really uncomfortable with the idea of giving me that oversight. And so it was something that I integrated into my own clinical supervision. So what does this have to do with AI? One of the reasons that therapists are really liking AI and documentation is because it sometimes gives them a space of oh, that sounds smart. I don't have to figure this out. I don't have to, they don't really know what a good note looks like. They've never gotten their confidence level. And so they're assuming that, oh, this is a good note. It may or may not be. And because we haven't really done a great job in our profession, it gets really messy. Okay, so let's talk about the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. At the federal work, we got some things to work through. FTC has warned that marketing AI as therapeutic or diagnostic without proper regulation or transparency could be deceptive advertising. They're watching, but they're not yet acting in a coordinated way. The FDA has intervened in some cases, pausing the rollout of Woebot for teens, but not for adults, but has no comprehensive framework for digital mental health tools powered by AI. No current federal protections exist around the use of the terms therapy, therapist, or counseling by AI systems. And it doesn't mean that states aren't trying to do something, but there's also been some pressure at the federal level to say states actually shouldn't get to do that.
It's still under debate now.
Correct.
And so
so they've been
that could have changed by the time that this recording goes out. So
the conversation is still happening. And so it's been kind of wild, right? And when the federal government doesn't regulate it, then it falls to the state. As a result, states like California, New Jersey, and Utah, they're all pursuing targeted AI laws like bans on AI systems misrepresenting themselves as licensed professionals. Utah requires mental health chatbot providers to disclose they aren't human. California has pending AI therapy bills, but as of this moment, maybe I missed something, none of them have passed yet. New Jersey doesn't allow AI systems to advertise as licensed mental health professionals. It's patchwork, it's moving, and I think actually somebody's already challenging Utah stuff, if I recall correctly, so it's pretty nasty. Best practices. Utah said, hey, you have to have informed consent. Explain the AI use to data practices and risks. It must allow revocation and offer non-AI alternatives. You have to review the AI vendor's data protections, requires HIPAA level safeguards and formal agreements. BAAs does not rely solely on vendor HIPAA certification. So that idea that I signed up for this thing and said it was HIPAA certified, that's not enough. We can't just say, well, they said I was HIPAA certified. And we have to understand BAAs. This is really wild. A lot of therapists are like, yeah, I have a BAA with this company or the service. And when you dive in, what you find is that sometimes therapists are giving a BAA to that service. So the service they think they're getting a BAA from, a business associate agreement to take care of the HIPAA, they're actually giving the BAA to that person, which is not quite right. So it just gets really funky. So yeah, there's a lot.
So before we dive into what we can do to have a voice for better regulation, we just want to give you some questions for reflection. Again, you can pause or you can write these down and come back to them later. Really, what research do I need to do with my board, my state, my country, and licensing laws? There just might be some level of empowerment and knowledge you need to gain here of like, what system am I operating in, right? And then what advocacy do I feel called to be a part of? Talking to my association, my licensing board. What training do I need on the AI I am currently using in my work? And getting really clear on whose ethics do I follow, right? You want to understand your own guardrails, the system you're operating in, the ethics that inform that system, and the tools that you are using. So let's just take a moment. A lot of feelings can come up around this, right? You don't have to have all the answers, but it's important that with like each breath, right, we just open up a little bit more curiosity to find the answers. So let's look at how we protect the profession and ultimately protect you and your clients. So we've explored what AI therapy is and isn't, and taken stock of the ethical gray zones. And this part of our training is all about what's next, right? We're here because we believe therapy matters. We believe you matter, and this profession is worth protecting. So this is going to be your invitation to act, not perfectly, not loudly, but clearly and consistently from your own values and capacity.
I mean, here's the question. If AI chatbots can start calling themselves therapists, does the title start to lose all meaning? And then anyone or anything can be a therapist, right? Like maybe Kelly's sweet little dog, Maple. Right?
That's one anxious therapist, I will tell you.
I mean, there's a lot of anxious therapists out there. Right? We need clearer guardrails. Right now, terms like doctor protected in many contexts, but therapist is up for grabs. We believe that we need national regulation of title usage. We need digital platform accountability from our app stores, from social media app approvals. And we do need our licensing board and associations to push for enforceable language. And we need clinicians who are willing to speak up before this gets out of hand, right?
So before we lose hope, let's remember, many of you here have the resourcing to advocate. If you have the bandwidth, we invite you to use your voice. And advocacy doesn't have to be, loud. We just want some consistency and clarity around it. Here's some ways you can advocate. You can ask your licensing board to issue guidance on AI. You can encourage your associations to launch public education campaigns. You can share informed consent templates with your colleagues that include AI transparency. You can request that CE providers and grad schools include AI in training. We can write or co-sign letters calling for title protections and safety standards. We can demand better from the AI that we do use and ask them to get involved with those companies, provide them feedback, hold them accountable, speak up when something doesn't seem right. And if this sounds like a lot, that's because it is, but we believe like many hands make light work, right? And remember, you could always use AI to help you write the letters, the consent forms, the blogs on the subject. And if you don't have the capacity to use your voice, let's talk about labor specifically. Your labor. Some tech companies are using clinician-generated session data to train their AI. Several EHR companies include clauses allowing data usage for, quote, research and development, end quote, which may include AI training. Companies like Elios or Listen use recorded sessions to train predictive and generative models. BetterHelp and other platforms have been criticized for vague data sharing policies and opaque privacy practices. But what you can do is you can read your contracts and make sure sessions aren't recorded, stored, or used in any way. Even if they say all recordings are deleted, ask the question, what about the transcripts? Are those saved? Are you training AI on the session recordings before deleting them? Are you de-identifying data and using every session for research and data collection?
You can also start in your office with your clients, right? You could say like, hey, have you come across any mental health apps or tools lately that you found helpful or confusing, right? Like have the conversation, just like we've been around long enough that we were here before social media was a thing in therapy. Like we need to be able to assess, to maybe saying something like, hey, clients have been trying AI-based tools like chatbots. If you ever do, I'd love to help you evaluate whether they're safe or useful. Hey, there's a lot out there that sounds like therapy, but isn't. If you're ever unsure, let's talk about it together, right? What can we do to build trust and safety, to validate their curiosity while highlighting the difference in working with a trained, accountable human, and also noticing the ways they could safely use some kind of resource. If you are properly vetting a program, and maybe it could be a great support to what you're doing, to be able to talk about that too. Right? We want to help our clients build discernment, not fear.
Another step is like looking at our contracts in terms of use. You know, that checkbox that says, I agree to the terms, right? When Miranda was saying that, like even when you're maybe using a platform and they pop up a little screen that you have to get out of quickly so you can use the tool. But that's where AI gets permission to mine the data. So here's what to encourage. Teach clients to ask, who owns the data? Is it encrypted? Will it be shared? Right? Whenever our clients are using these tools, right? Remind them emotional support apps are likely not to be bound by HIPAA. HIPAA is specific to medical care. And if they are saying they aren't really providing medical care, then they aren't bound by those regulations. Help them understand private doesn't always mean protected. And therapists can also model this. Don't skip your own review of the tools you use, whether it's AI note helpers, automated schedulers, chat widgets. As NBCC states, we mentioned this before, quote, counselors must ensure that they understand the ethical, legal, and functional aspects of the technology that they use. That's from 2024, end quote. So yeah, I think that this is something really important to review all of your contracts and empower your clients to do the same.
In an article in 2024, Ben Caldwell, who is a therapist colleague, talks about how there'll always be a market for human-based psychotherapy. If a client is turning to ChatGPT instead of a therapist, it's not just because they're misinformed. It might be because they're having experiences with therapists that are rushed, or maybe they're working with a therapist who's burned out. These are real issues. Maybe they couldn't get in for weeks. Their care didn't feel human. And that's hard to talk about. Like, it's not something that we want in our profession. We don't want any client to have this experience, but we owe it to ourselves and our clients to ask, are we, right? Not anybody else, but like me as a human, me as a therapist, am I showing up to each and every session in the way that I want to, in the way that I can really be present, right? Ben writes, quote, when therapists do our work well, when we're attuned, intentional, and present, we offer something that no AI can replicate, end quote. Your humanity is the healing. Don't underestimate it, right? Right? Can we be honest about the value of therapy with a human and why it matters, not from a place of defensiveness, but a place of reclamation and liberation? We do so much that AI can never do or cannot do at the moment. Somatic practice and specializations and populations that need to be served, and those innovative ways of serving. And I think it's also really important that we really dive into our clinical outcomes, and not in an AI check the box sort of way, but in a real attuned way where we can be connected and with our clients and integrate what we learn into what we're doing in our business and clinical practices, and then see how that impacts our clients and then continue to move through that.
So let's just take a moment and pause here. We want to encourage a few questions for you to reflect on. Again, you can do this now or later, but what part of your work could never be replaced by a machine? Where can you start to advocate for yourself and your clients? How do you want your profession to be remembered or protected 10 years from now? What's one conversation you can have this week to protect the integrity of your work? What makes you a unique human, and are you practicing in a way that honors that? As we look at those questions, I don't know about you, but I do feel on fire about this stuff. And I think it's good to just like soften the breath and really kind of take in some compassion for ourselves and all that we are navigating as clinicians right now in the mental health field. And let's just be clear, just because we've unpacked the risks of AI therapy doesn't mean AI has no place in your work. In fact, we believe when you use it with intention and integrity, it can support you in meaningful ways. And it's not about replacing the human parts. It's about freeing up your energy so you can bring more of the humanness into the room. So this last section, we want to really explore where AI can serve you ethically, effectively, and in alignment with your values. So just pause for a moment. You do not have to use AI. Not now, not ever. Maybe you've chosen to divest from tech companies whose values don't align. Maybe AI stresses your nervous system or becomes a rabbit hole, or you're waiting for regulation, or you just don't find it helpful. Maybe you hate the environmental impact. All of that is valid. And you can have a wildly successful practice without ever logging into ChatGPT. We promise you. So if you use AI, if you are in choice and you feel like this is right for you, we ask that it be intentional, not habitual. You use it to serve your mission, being mindful every time you turn to your keyboard.
In our work with therapists, we teach them about systems and having them save you time, money, and energy, and improving clinical outcomes. So let's first, important, draw a very bright line. There are things your practice that you cannot hand over to AI. If it involves clinical reasoning, ethics, or risk, it's your job, period. That means the clinical decision-making, the risk assessments, the interpreting of documentation, and writing notes for reimbursements. AI may help draft or summarize, but it doesn't understand context, nuance, trauma, or legal responsibility. It also makes up stuff regularly. So if something goes wrong, you, not the tool, are liable. But here's the good news. There are tons of ways AI can make the business side of your practice lighter, from networking communication to content creation to SEO. It can save you time, energy, and even a lot of money. You'll still want to review and humanize everything, but you don't have to start from scratch, which can really help. Here are some things that AI can help with when used thoughtfully. Admin and communication, for no-show emails, for FAQs, welcome templates, for seasonal newsletters, content and copywriting. It can come with blog outlines. It can help you do a draft of a blog you've already written to optimize it for SEO. It can use it for social captions after you've made a video for social media, for SEO and visibility, helping you research keywords, writing Google profile updates, optimizing your site for ChatGPT visibility. And for some of our therapists, private practice owners, like they changed the game and have just created so much ease.
So if we look at like some categories to start thinking about using AI in your workflow, let's just look at some tools. So you have documentation and EHR support. That's one category. We really love Melissa McCaffrey. She reviews a lot of the note-taking software. Check out her reviews. They're great. But that is one area of support that's common for therapists. The other is practice organization and workflow. This is really for planning your projects, keeping your to-do list organized, getting your SOPs together. And then another category is the scheduling and admin. And this is really to help prioritize your email, get people booked into things. And then you have marketing and writing tools. We have SEO tools. There are tools in each of these categories that you can use. And if you are getting junky results from the AI that you're using, particularly around writing, we want to be clear, like there's a technique of using AI well, right? You have to be specific about your audience and tone. Like when you give direction, like write a blog for adults with anxiety, age 30 to 50 in a warm, supportive tone. But you also have to give the context. I'm a somatic therapist working with BIPOC queer youth recovering from religious trauma. And then you want to give it your own information of like what you want it to include, what your voice is. You don't ask AI to teach you. You're teaching AI and telling it what to put in there. You can use it to brainstorm, giving you 5 post ideas about boundary setting during the holidays. But you always humanize it. You always make sure your voice is in it. You don't just copy and paste. You have to add your own story and your values. And don't ask AI to sound like a therapist. It's so tempting, but it's ethically really messy. You want to keep it behind the scenes, not in a clinical space.
Also, don't ask it to sound professional. I promise you the response you'll get from like, make this meet sound professional will be the coldest, most like, like icky.
So some questions for you to consider after, since we've talked about this, is like, look at where are you wasting energy doing things that AI could help with? Where are you tempted to outsource things that maybe you shouldn't? And how can you use AI to give you back time to be a better therapist, right? Just breathe that in for a moment. So we've talked about AI therapy, ethics, protecting our profession, and how AI can support us. But let's come back to why you're really here. You want a practice you love. You want clients who are the right fit, who heal and grow and transform. You want to be proud and aligned and well paid without burning out or selling out. So let's talk about how to become the human that clients are actually looking for. This is so important.
I mean, you've heard it all over the place in Facebook groups. This is not 2020. Referrals are slowing down. What if AI could be an answer? Here's a real therapist. They said, quote, an inquiry found me on ChatGPT. I had 5 inquiries in the first 2 weeks of the month that resulted in 4 consults and 3 new clients. When it rains, it pours. 2 referrals from therapists, 1 from a client, 1 from Psychology Today, and 1 from chat. Another therapist said, I just typed into Google Gemini, can you help me find a therapist in my city who does CBTI? And it gave my name. I was the first one on the list. The truth is the days are gone where you can just put up a Psychology Today profile and get full. You're going to have to run your business like a business, right? It's really important, and AI can help. It doesn't just replace therapists. It can refer to us too. We're seeing it so much. When you as a therapist follow sound SEO strategies, you show up authentically and speak directly to people. Guess who ChatGPT starts pointing clients to? Tools like ChatGPT, Google's AI snippets, and Gemini are showing people the websites and the content and the practices that are aligned with what people are requesting, but that can't happen if you're invisible or irrelevant online, right? And you don't have to game the system. You just need to show up with clarity and heart. You need to have a clear niche. Therapist for anxious millennials in San Diego works better than I see everybody from 8 to 88, right? Add location and specialty keywords to your website, even for online practices, especially for online practices. Include your state, your license, your population, and common concerns. Create expert human written content. AI can help you get started with blog posts that answer real client questions like what happens in trauma therapy. Use schema and basic SEO. Have a Google business profile. Get reviews from colleagues. Use SEO best practices. And of course, be a person, not a brand. Share your why. Include a photo, a story, and a human tone.
When we look at a lot of the clinicians that are getting referred by ChatGPT, they all come from different walks of life, different models, but the through line is that they're doing excellent work, they're visible, and they're honest. about what they do, where their lane is, like their capacity. They market with integrity. They stand out by being themselves because clients are craving that connection and presence. So chat will refer to them, but when a person goes to their website, they feel a true connection. And so if AI is going to point clients somewhere, let it point to someone authentic. Don't try to out AI, be real and be you. That's how we win, right? So think about, what do you need, right? Less fear, more empowerment, confidence in your own voice, reassurance that you're not behind, you're just not burned out. Let's be real, right? AI is changing everything, but it can't replace connection. It can't replace you, but it can support you though. So just tap in, because all that is happening in the field, there's still a place for you here. We believe that private practice is where therapists can flourish because it's where they can align their work with who they are without involvement of corporations or third parties. And burnout is rampant in our field. That's why the fear might be creeping up as well, because we're worn out, but you are needed. And it's important to come back to your heart and your knowing. So just close your eyes for a second and pause and breathe. Why did you become a therapist? What does it feel like when a client says, you helped me feel seen for the first time? That feeling, that knowing, that's what makes you irreplaceable. So let's not bypass the fear, the grief, the anger, the overwhelm. These feelings are really valid. They're here to guide you. You don't need to push them away, but you can get curious. What's no longer working for you here? What is still sacred that needs to be protected? And where do you want to go from here?
Thank you all again for being with us here today for this juicy conversation. We're over at zinnyme.com with our business school for therapists, and we help people navigate really tricky things while keeping their humanness and doing really great work with clients. So thanks, y'all.
You've just finished listening to another exclusive continuing ed podcast by Clearly Clinical. If you like what you just heard and you need continuing ed credits, please visit us at clearlyclinical.com to check out our 1-year membership, where you'll have access to our growing library of continuing ed podcast courses. Clearly Clinical, where our goal is to help you learn, grow, and shine.